Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in this video we are going to be discussing about various brush properties. So these properties, if you go through each of them, they will make you understand how your brush should be, and they will also help you customize the brushes that you already have or create a new brush. So yeah, let's dive into that. To start off with, I'm just gonna click on any of the brushes that you already have and just open the brush settings interface. So in this interface, if you see, there are a lot of attributes and the corresponding properties that are there over here for each attribute. And there's also this drawing pad where you can try and test out how your properties are looking like, if you need to change few things, or how your basically the brush is looking like. So I've planned on dividing this entire thing in several parts so that it's easier for you to understand, so that since there are a lot of properties and the attributes that are there in the Procreate, it can be a little overwhelming to cover that all and try to understand all of it in one single video. So in this video, I'm just going to be discussing the first two properties or attributes that you have in Procreate, that is stroke path and stabilization. The rest of them will be in the upcoming parts of this video. So first thing that we are going to be discussing is the stroke path. Stroke path basically contains all the attributes that will determine how your each stroke should look like. So basically, if I just draw a line on, if I just touch my pencil on the drawing pad like this, it basically creates one stroke. So there are several properties over here which will help you determine how your stroke should look like. So I'm just going to clear the drawing pad over here and we'll go through each of these attributes and try to understand them a little better. So first thing you have is spacing. So in Procreate, Apple usually creates this stroke using several particles that are there. So basically all the particles will be combined together to make one particular stroke. So your spacing will determine the offset between each of the particles to make one particular stroke. So for example, if the spacing here is set to none and is very low, so you're not gonna notice much difference here. It's just one single stroke. In case if I increase the spacing over here, you can see the individual particles which are basically there in this particular stroke. So if you see, it's sort of like a blotch. So that is one particle. And when you decrease the spacing, all of those little blotches that are there, they'll be combined and made into one single stroke. So you can play around with the spacing over here in case if you want to create a stamp brush. So the next property that is there is the jitter. So jitter basically determines how much randomness that should be there between each particle in your stroke. For example, I'm just gonna set the spacing to 80 or even max, and I'm going to clear the drawing pad and I'll set the jitter to maximum. That means that I need maximum randomness between each particles that is there in the stroke. So if I draw a stroke over here, you can see that these particles are just scattered into different places and the difference between them is kind of like random. So that is what jitter basically controls. If you reduce the jitter, the offset between each particle would be much more equal, I would say. And if you increase the jitter, there will be more randomness. Like for example, these two particles, they are close, these two are a little far. So yeah, that is what basically jitter is. This again would help and come into picture if you're creating brushes with sort of like a sprinkle effect. For example, you want to create a brush with like a starry pattern or something, and then you want those stars to be scattered so that every time you just draw a stroke, the stars are scattered and give you that sky or the galaxy effect. So in that case of brushes, jitter will be helpful if you know exactly like how much you need to set. The next property that we have over here is the fall off. So fall off basically determines how much opacity your particles should have. So if you can see here, I'm increasing and decreasing the fall off slider over here. I'm just gonna reduce the jitter over here and the spacing as well, so you can see it better on how the fall off would look like. So this is my stroke without any fall off. If I increase the fall off, as you can see, the particles are getting more and more transparent. So it starts with full opacity, and as and when it moves forward, the opacity decreases. It's becoming more transparent now. So that is how fall off would work like. This could come into pictures if you want to give your brush a much more natural, smoother, much more natural finish, like as in when you do it on the paper. For example, if you go with like gouache or a watercolor brush, initially when you apply the watercolor brush on the paper, there will be more paint, and as in when you lift your brush off, the amount of paint that is there reduces naturally. In I keep saying iPad, I'm not sure why. I should be saying Procreate instead. Yeah. So in Procreate, that can be controlled by adjusting your fall off to give it a more natural kind of feeling. In order to move to the next attribute that we have over here, I'm just gonna set all these to none, so that we can better understand how the stabilization works. Now, stabilization is one of the really good features that Procreate has, wherein it will give you sort of like a smoother finish to your strokes that you have. So this will basically come into picture if you're into calligraphy and if you sort of want to create like cards or anything where you'll be writing stuff. In that case, having stabilization really helps, as your curves would not be wobbly. They'll be much more smoother and they'll be much more stabilized. So I'm just gonna clear the drawing pad and then we'll go through each of these. So basically we have like three attributes, main attributes that we have. So the first one we have is streamline. So streamline basically assists in drawing the smoother strokes or smoother lines basically. In order to demonstrate that, I have this streamline amount set to none over here and this streamline pressure set to none over here. So I'm just going to draw a normal stroke that you have. As you can see here, the curve is a little wobbly. It's not exactly smooth. So I'm just going to increase streamline over here, the amount of streamline, and as you can see, the little wobbliness that we had over here, it's already sort of decreasing as in when I increase the amount. So this basically helps you to draw much more smoother curves or much more smoother strokes. Next we have pressure over here. Pressure basically determines like how much pressure sensitivity your pencil or the stroke should have basically. So what happens is, if I increase the pressure to max in the slider, it means that I have to put a lot more pressure for the paint to come out. If I decrease the pressure sensitivity over here, it means that even with the slightest and even with the lightest strokes, the paint is coming out quite nicely. Normally, I usually keep it to none, because there's another attribute in the Brush Studio wherein there are several more options to customize how your pencil should work, like with a bit of pressure. So I usually tend to keep it none over here, and whatever pressure settings or pressure changes that I have to do, I usually do it over there. So that will be covered in the future videos. For now, we're just gonna leave it to none. So next we have is stabilization, and under stabilization you can just set the amount of stability that you want in each strokes. I'm just going to clear the drawing pad over here and will explain you how the amount under stabilization works. So I'm just going to draw a little curvy sort of stroke here. So it's really curvy over here. So I'm just going to increase the stabilization. So as you see here, the amount of curves that I drew earlier are sort of reducing and merging into like one particular arc or one particular curve. So here they were like what, like 1, 2, 3, 4 U-turns around. Yeah, 4 U-turns. But as in when I increase the stability, it's sort of like reducing and converging into like just 2 of the, not even 2, just 1 of the U-turn over here, right? Stability basically helps you, and it sort of gives you that magnetic pull to your brush, so you can't just draw a lot of curves when you have it set to maximum. So this is something again that will help you when you're drawing like characters, like for example some Japanese characters or a kanji that you're practicing. In that case, this particular option will really help you out so that you don't need to bring a lot of curves. So the next attribute is motion filtering. So motion filtering and stabilization, they work pretty much similar to each other, but the only difference is in stabilization you just reduce the amount of curviness to that line. It tends to be a little bit smoother, but not entirely like straight line or something. What essentially happens in motion filtering is that it completely deletes that curvy nature to the brush that you have. So for example, example, I'm just gonna leave the stabilization, or maybe I can show them side by side so you can understand how stabilization works and how motion filtering works. So to start off with, I'm just gonna set the stabilization to 50 and I'm gonna draw a curvy line. It still sort of has these curves, even though if I reduce it they would be much more smoother, but it still retains some of that curviness when you keep it to 50. So I'm just going to draw the same thing over here with the same sort of like curvy structure, and I'm going to reduce this now and I'm going to increase the amount of motion filtering. So as you can see, the curviness is almost like disappearing and now it's just like a simple arc, you know. So that is what is motion filtering is. It basically takes out the motions that you do with your pencil and just gives out one straight line or a slightly curvy line or an arc. While motion filtering deletes all that curvy or a wobbly nature to your line, expression is something that will still try to bring out the curviness so that it feels a little bit more natural as compared to what you do in motion filtering. So it basically like whatever was deleted, whatever was deleted during when we were setting the motion filtering too high, expression basically brings back. But you can actually notice this when you set the amount to lower levels like below 50, because the more motion filtering you have, no matter how much expression or how much you slide this part, there's just no difference, right? I'm just gonna draw, right, I'm just gonna clear the amount and set it to none, or maybe I'll just set it to 20 and I'll leave the expression to none, and I'm drawing this line. It's kind of smooth. It's not entirely smooth like when you set it to 100% or something, but it's kind of still smooth. And when I increase the expression, if you see that it's trying to add more curviness to it. That means whatever was deleted when we were setting the amount to some value, it's trying to bring it back, to bring the natural finish back to your brush. So that's what expression basically does. So yeah, I would definitely recommend you to try out these two things that we have learned in this video by yourself, by drawing it and using different various brushes that are already there in the Procreate, so it will be more clear to you. So yeah, that's all I have for this video, and in the next video we're going to be discussing about the next set of attributes that we have. So until then, see you, take care, bye bye.